Alright, here's one of my favorite plants coming into the season, just starting to bloom right now. Are you familiar with this plant?
Hello everyone, welcome to the Sovereign Village Project. I'm here with Randall Conner. He is our latest addition to the Back to the Land Festival demonstrator lineup. And today we are going to be talking about his expertise and his knowledge in foraging, which he will be bringing to the festival. What's really cool about Randall is that his knowledge is just so expansive, it's so vast, that he can not only show you kind of how to forage, what to look for, but also he's really knowledgeable about what you can actually do with the wild plants that you're finding. You know, what plants are best for making, teas or actually like incorporating into your meals. So really excited to kind of sit down and chat with him today. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is, I know that right now you do a lot of classes with like Master Gardener, you run your own sort of classes, but how long have you actually been doing this? How long have you been foraging, and how did you get into it?
Well, three-part question. So I've been foraging since I've been about 4 and started as a youth and living out in the country, northern California and Oregon and such. And at a young age, it was just part of getting dinner together, was to go out and gather what was growing. That's what our aunts and the farmers around there did. And my mom says it was had an hour to dinner. I knew that even at 4 or 5 years old, it was time to go out and see what was growing. So as I got older, I became more interested in it. I read the Firefox series of books. And so I really started studying in earnest at about probably 10 or 12 years old. Went on a lot of excursions in high school, spending up to like 23 days in the mountains of Colorado, seeing how long I could survive on just what food was up there. Then in the military, they gave me jungle survival training and everything like that, and I really got into it. But as far as teaching classes, I have been teaching classes now for about 23 years at festivals and other places. And then I started really getting interested in taking this to a professional level about 15 years ago. And that's when I started teaching classes. I teach at a lot of different parks and private properties and such. And it inspired me to start writing books and learning plants in depth. So I gave up the TV and most social life, and I literally study up to 10, 12 hours a day and write, and just to get where I'm at, to try to share the information that's been lost for the last couple hundred years on how plants have been used and incorporated into the lives of people. And it's just a lost art, but it's still fun, and it's still something that we can use today.
Yeah, so speaking of your books and everything, what we met with Randall a couple weeks ago, and we're really inspired by his projects with his books, really, because you mentioned that what inspired you to start writing the book was you had read all these other books. Obviously, he's very well read, and just every foraging book you read, you said that you didn't think it was taught very well. So can
Right.
I guess kind of describe the way you teach and how it's different from what most people might read in a book that is on the market these days.
Well, most foraging books today deal with just a simple 1 to 2 paragraph description along with a couple pictures, and they say that the leaves are edible, and they just leave it at that. Plus, a lot of foraging books today, they're so generic that you'll find one and it's plants for east of the Mississippi. Well, that's great, but if you live in Florida, you're not going to find the same plants there as you find in Wisconsin. The books that I'm writing are very specific to the Tennessee, Kentucky area, a floristic zone that is very unique in the plants that it has. And then I'm going extensively into depth of knowing all plants, not just 20 or 30. I'm actually up to over 1,200 plants that are forageable just in the Tennessee, Kentucky area. And then I study the ethnobotany, or the history of their uses. And then I go out and find these plants, then I actually use them as they were back then. And then I'm also a chef, so I use those plants in foods in modern day. And then I also study the medicinals, textiles, dyes, everything else, cordage. There's a lot of different uses. And so I explore that, and then I actually do it. And so that's what's different.
I think what I found really fascinating about kind of the way you described how you teach people is that you're not just teaching people. I guess you said there are like kind of multiple ways you can go about foraging. You can
Mhm.
say, oh, I know I want to find X plant,
Mhm.
and you can kind of do that. But what you do is you teach by, basically like by environment,
Right.
by, can you go a little?
I break it down to 4 different things. Rather than just trying to identify a plant, which is one way, and then going to look for it, that is one way, and that's the way a lot of people do it. But if you become more skilled, then you can be out in the wild and find a plant and try to identify it. That's always more fun and challenging. But what I teach is that I teach by, first of all, by season. There's certain plants that are only going to grow by season. And even if the plant grows for, let's say, 9 months, certain parts of the plant are going to be more usable in spring or summer or in fall. So I teach by season. Then I also teach by habitat. And that's very important because most plants only grow in certain habitats. You're not going to look for um, a sunflower in the middle of a pond, and you're not going to look for cattails in the middle of a field. So that's just a wild example. But so once you know the habitat of where your plant lives, then you'll be able to know where to look for it there. Then, of course, I also teach by a thing called grow zones and everything like that. But another third thing is I teach by family. Rather than trying to learn just one species of one plant, if you can know the family of it, as we were just talking about with asters, once you're able to recognize that a plant is in the aster family, and then it narrows it down from about 400,000 plants in the world down to about only about 30,000 plants. But still, that's a big drop. And then I teach you how to go from family down to genus. What a genus of plants, maybe let's say like goldenrod. Here in Tennessee, there's about 30 different types of goldenrod. They're all in the same genus, different species. And yes, each one will have a slightly different flavor and mildly different use. But rather than trying to identify each individual species and getting lost in all that, I just teach you to recognize the whole genus. Then you can use pieces of paper and go through with what I call key identifiers, which is a way I came up with to actually figure out by a process of elimination what specific species this is. Kind of like using an identifier tree, online or something, except this is more specific to each plant rather than just random. I'll choose this and choose this feature. So that way, people have a lot more confidence in when they find something, being able to identify it.
That's great. Yeah. So that's basically at the festival how he'll kind of be demonstrating and showing you guys how to see different plants that will be at Nakomi Camp and Retreat Center. So where we're hosting the main part of the festival, there are tons of wooded areas just kind of backing that, and he'll be able to take anyone who wants to on a wild weed walk, which is actually what he's taking me on here today. I'm gonna show you some footage from that, but it's really informative, and we're really excited to have him at the festival. But I also want to touch on kind of festivals you've done in the past. What's the one, the main one that you cook for a bunch of people?
Yeah, the main one, I work with Jeff Poppin, and every year up in Red Boiling Springs, he has equinox and solstice festivals, and he also has a biodynamic conference every year. And I've been going to those things for about 27 years, and he inspired me more than anyone to really get more involved in everything. And so I started honing my craft up there, having at his festivals he can have up to 1,200 people there. And so I'll just set up my tent and hang out my shingle, and people come up, and it's a lot of fun. I may introduce sometimes 200 or 300 people over a weekend to the act of foraging and what it is. So even down to, like, one thing we'll be doing at this class is teaching how to make cordage from yucca and from a dogbane. And it's interesting seeing, and we'll actually be able to forage, get the product, and then actually teach people how to make the cordage right there, so that by the time they've left the festival, they've gone from plant in the wild to cordage in hand. And when you have that, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So then, just last question, kind of a fun question here. I know you know what 1,200 plants you said. Can you even pick one that you're most fascinated by, or one that you particularly enjoy kind of working with, or have received the most benefit from? What's one or a few? Or
boy, that's a tough one to kind of pick. I have favorites for every season.
Yeah.
Right now, I think one of my favorite ones is Perilla Mint. And Perilla mint is just interesting because I just love the flavor of it, and it grows abundantly as a weed. People are trying to eradicate it, and I know where a lot of it grows, and so it's great because it costs like $9–10 a pound in the grocery stores, and I know where there's probably 500 pounds of it growing right now. So I really have fun with that. What I'm really exploring this year, though, is cordage and dyes, and so I'm really interested in those. And I suppose that has more of my focus and attention this year than anything.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much again, Randall, for letting me pick your brain for a few minutes here. And if anyone is interested in meeting Randall at the festival, just remember that you can still get tickets at backtothelandfestival.com. And I think that is it. So just remember that the festival will be October 15th through the 17th, and Randall will mainly be there on the 16th, so that's the Saturday. And yeah, I think that is all we've got today. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.
Enjoy.